Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is part of our conversation series. I am just one voice in this relationship diversity movement, and it's important to bring more unique perspectives into the conversation. Today, I'll be talking with my friend Annie Henderson, a professional life coach and coming out coach, where she shares her personal story about coming out later in life and gives some amazing tips on how to approach your own journey of bringing your authentic self out into the world. But first, a little about Annie. She's a certified professional life coach specializing as a coming out coach for the LGBTQIA community and helps people pleasers that avoid conflict, over-apologize, and struggle to say no start living authentically and find the peace they've been missing. After going from an unfulfilled existence, checking all the boxes of perceived success, to breaking into an intentional, abundant life, she now uses her experiences and professional background as a teacher, counselor, and life coach to teach and mentor others. In working with her diverse clientele to discover unapologetic joy, including the LGBTQIA community and people pleasers, her teachings focus on releasing self-doubt, embracing the power in setting boundaries, and removing the habit of over-apologizing. She's the international best-selling co-author of She Did It, which follows women from around the world and their transformational journey. Annie's master degrees in education, school counseling, and professional counseling complement her mission and inform her regular content shared with her loyal followings on TikTok and Instagram. Let's get into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Relationship Diversity Podcast, where I have the beautiful, the amazing Annie Henderson. I am so excited you're here, Annie.
Thank you for having me, Carrie.
I was on your podcast several years ago, I think.
Yeah, yes. I love a good full circle. It's lovely. Yeah, so glad to be on. I'm excited for what you're doing here.
Thank you. And Annie, you have such an inspiring story that really fits into my message of, knowing your unique self to know what you want in a relationship. So I'd love for you to talk about your story and tell us, how you got here right now.
All right. Yeah. So, it started off with me being a giant people pleaser growing up, right? In the words of Don Miguel Ruiz and the Four Agreements, a lot of a domestication, right? Most of us have that, to where we're taught what's good and what's bad and what's right, wrong, girl, boy, right? Very labeled and direct. And this is the path to take, and the only path. So I did that. I was very good at saying, yes. If a guy asked me out, sure. Right. So I just went from like dating one guy to the next guy to the next guy. Like once I would finally be like, okay, this one's over, the next one. So very compliant. Right. I was raised Catholic, grew up with a lot of Southern Baptist friends, met some Mormon missionaries. So I was very always curious and interested how I ended up at 19 getting married into a Pentecostal church. So I had a little sampling, and I was always so interested and confused about how, even within the same city, right? All the different denominations could be like, we are the right one. The rest are going to hell.
Right.
And I was like, wait, because I know this person and they're so passionate and believe 100%. And this person, so amazing and wonderful and beautiful too. So I was always like, I didn't know what, but I knew I didn't quite fit in with everybody. And that didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, I got married at 19 and was a part of that church. I went to high school with a lot of them, very nice people, right? Um, and then uh, I, unlike my fiance, my fiance, she is someone that knew at the age of 5 that she was gay, right?
Mm.
She would come home and watch Elizabeth Shue on Karate Kid over and over again. She knew.
Uh-huh.
I just don't, recall. I just played sports and just kind of went along with, and I was in a small town in Texas, so there wasn't representation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, straight is the only option, right? Unless I
Mm-hmm.
was watching maybe a talk show where they were saying horrible things and
Mm-hmm.
reminding you that the Bible says. So it wasn't necessarily a message from my parents, although I could always tell some discomfort around my mom, but we didn't have tons of meaty conversations growing up.
Mm.
Um, so it wasn't until what I call my catalyst. Are you familiar with that kind of phrase?
I'm not. No.
So my world was just, now looking back, I can see it was like a settling, like, oh,
Mm.
this is check. I checked all the boxes. I got married, check. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school, I went to grad school, check. Got a career, had a baby, built a house. Like I was doing the good girl path and I did all the things and I was going to church, but something was still missing. I didn't quite know it. I was just like, this is it. And even with sex, I was like, this is, and I remember, speaking to some older women that were married, and they're like, yeah, that's just, it's just meh. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, good to know. So I'm not missing out on anything. That's just the way it is.
Wow.
Wah,
Yeah.
wah, wah.
Yeah.
um, and then I feel like this is a common thing with a lot of educators. I taught first. I got my master's degree in education. I taught at a Title One dual language school, and so my catalyst was another teacher
Mm.
that we were hanging out as friends. I was like, I'm married, you're married, like we're friends. Like my brain didn't even take that next step until she let me know that she was attracted to me. And then I was like, all the dots started connecting and like so quickly. And it just like made sense. But at the same time, it was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate because that can't happen.
Oh.
But she was not easily dissuaded. And eventually we did end up having a relationship, right?
Wow.
So in terms of guilt and doing all the wrong things in my very, domestication, people pleasing, it was it was so conflicting
Mm.
because on one hand it was, oh, this makes sense.
Mhm.
Finally, this makes sense. And then on the other hand, it was, this is so wrong, you're going to hell.
Right. Talk
So
about dual beliefs. Oh man.
yes, yes. And I do remember praying. I was like, strike me down.
Mm.
I don't think that like this is, I've been told this is not right. And instead I had a sense of peace,
Mm.
right, that came over me. Um, which was lovely, which was lovely.
Mm.
So going through that whole process, and we actually broke up, and then I got a divorce in that meantime, which was lovely in the sense of I wasn't jumping from this one to this one, right? There wasn't like, sometimes with my clients, there's like a safety net. Like, I want to have my next person lined up to make sure I really, really know that I'm gay. And instead it's, if it's not right already, you don't
Yeah.
need the next thing, right? There can be a beautiful space of you time.
Yeah.
So I did break up, or we did get divorced. And uh and then I reached out to, again, that catalyst, and I was like, I got a divorce. Right? I was so proud of myself. And then like I said, I got married at 19. So I was in my mid to late 20s when I was finally single and on my own. So many new experiences and experiencing the world by myself. I did have a daughter. So going through that, and, lots of fears, lots of self-judgment and assumptions of what other people might be thinking of me, mixed with some newfound, oh, I don't care because this is great. Um, and what was nice was what helped me realize that in that catalyst relationship, which ended up being a toxic relationship, and I didn't realize it because I didn't realize people pleasing was a bad thing yet. Because I was like, just went from that one, and I thought, oh, coming out, that will solve it all. That's it. That's the magic ticket. And instead it was, oh, I'm going to try to fix you. I'm always going to come last. I can't say no. I can't communicate or set boundaries. Ooh, right. Of course it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah. Was that kind of how you were in your marriage as well?
Very agreeable. I remember, and I just wrote this in the book, like the short version of, I thought, oh, this is a great marriage compared to my parents who fought actively. And I was like, oh, like, end it already. Like, get a divorce. We were very quiet. We didn't fight. Right. So it seemed like, right, I'm winning. I'm doing it. I'm doing it right. Instead, it was just passionless and just settling. But I didn't know it. I just knew it was different and better than this one.
Right.
So sometimes our brain can only fathom a little bit at a time. I was only, this game has infinite levels, and I thought level 2 was it, and I had made it. And that wasn't the case. There's so many levels, right? So it's kind of my own experience with, I guess, God as well, is that, when I was growing up, it was very God in a box. Like, we know everything that God thinks, and and we speak for him or her, whatever. And now it's like, oh, it's not that limited. I know earlier we were talking about labels, and totally agree. Labeling can be a helpful tool. My kiddo even taught me the word demisexual, right? Which was an aha for me, because I was like, oh, that's me. And there's a hilarious story that I shared in my book about Sam and when we first met, because I'm demisexual, which is in my limited language, and feel free to expand upon it, more of, I need to have a relationship and emotional connection before I can move on to that next stage.
Yes.
Which kind of makes sense why I wasn't really aware and attracted to anybody growing up, because I was just playing sports and a kid, and I never, only had limited time to even get to know people. So just clueless. So when we met, our mutual friend showed us both pictures, and Sam was like, yeah, sign me up. And I was like, it's a picture. Like, she could be horrible. I don't know.
Right.
So I was like, no, thanks. And of course, Sam's version is very dramatic. And she's like, you rejected me. But it makes sense along the lines of a demisexual, because I didn't have a connection. I didn't know. And with my experience of getting married at 19 and then going into a toxic relationship, I didn't really have dating experience either. Um, so that label was very helpful for that little piece. But
Mhm.
even within the alphabet mafia community, we can see people turn on one another, right? There's some people that are like, you're not a lesbian because you've been with a guy, so you're bisexual. And they're like, no, no, I'm really not.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
the way I was raised.
Those labels can really turn on people and I think can turn on yourself. You know, if you think like in order to be, you know, uh, a lesbian, I need to be this kind of person, then
Hmm.
I think that that sets people up for failure. You know, it's like I can't be what some person over there says that this label means. That's why I love the concept of relationship diversity and of diversifying identity as well, because there's no one like you. You are unique. There is no one like Annie Henderson. There's no one like Carrie Jarislow. And so if I'm meeting another unique person, that means that our relationship is absolutely unique as well. And when we can accept each other in that uniqueness and celebrate it, not only accept it, but celebrate it instead of making people wrong from like fulfilling, you know, not fulfilling some kind of label that's totally made up anyway. So how did you get from the toxic relationship and like what was the process, I guess, of getting to know who you are and accepting who you are and kind of picking apart all of this programming that you had been given growing up to get to the place where you can say, this is me and this is who I am and this is what I want.
Yes. So after that toxic relationship, right, it was my first chance to be on my own. And, had an apartment with my kiddo, um, still a teacher at the time. And I got to spend time with friends. One thing that I notice with a lot of my people pleaser clients is there's a lot of polling that goes on and going along with what anyone else wants to do. So there were, I had to learn what I liked, right? If there's no one else to choose dinner, to
Mhm.
choose the restaurant, that means I get to choose. So getting to kind of know myself and realize, oh, this is what I like. No one else is around. I'm going to eat this or I'm going to watch this.
Mhm.
So very eye-opening and a great experience. And I know with a lot of my clients, I, often encourage them. If you're not in a relationship, don't rush it,
Mhm.
right? Take the time to see what music you like, right? Notice what you like to wear because even with celebrities, it's funny. I've seen, sometimes when you're with someone, you start dressing like them, or you start
Mhm.
listening to their music, or you kind of become a chameleon and do what they like to do. So lots of exploring, exploring myself, not jumping into the next relationship. And if I back it up, I hadn't probably been single since I was probably around 14. So
Wow.
having to think and use my own brain and decision-making skills, it had been constant relationships, and I hadn't had that. Um, so as I mentioned before, The Four Agreements, I think
Mm.
is such an incredible book,
Amazing
right?
book.
I know my clients like it, but I know non-clients are like, that's a life-changing book.
Yeah, I'm gonna
And I
link
know when I
that because
first read it, the very
hmm I was just gonna say I'm gonna
mhm,
link that
the
book.
beginning of
It's
it,
powerful.
yeah. Yes, yes, it is. And it's one of those books that isn't a one-time read. It's all right, it's been a quarter, or it's been 6 months, or it's been a year. It's time to go back. And even if
Mhm.
you just kind of quiz yourself on the four agreements, like, how have I been doing with my self-talk? Am I impeccable with my word?
Mhm.
Oh, no, I just was calling myself fat the other day. Okay, I guess I need to go back and read that chapter,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Am I taking things personal? Am I making assumptions, right? And just checking in with ourselves. I think, yeah, that book alone was just so amazing. Um, and just our culture and how when I was first coming out, there it was far and few between when there would be a lesbian character in a a main one in a movie or a show or anything like that. I don't know if you've watched A League of Their Own, this new version.
Not the new one. Mm-mm.
No.
Not the new one.
So good. Right? I've watched it multiple times, but I could watch it again. But it's, the old version edited out all the gayness. Like,
Mm.
oh no, these weren't lesbians playing baseball. These were just women waiting for their husbands to come back. And this version is like honors all the different kind of women that came and played, and highly recommend it. So good.
Mm.
But just being able to see representation,
Mhm.
also being able to have supportive people. I didn't. I think I stopped going to church for a while just because I lived in a small town and it
Mhm.
wasn't something. Even though like my own idea and my own thoughts and beliefs had shifted from this fear-based God,
Mhm.
which, that's kind of how we're brought up. Like, if you don't do this, you're going to
Mhm.
go to hell. If you don't do
Yeah.
this, just like, and to a love version, whether it's God or universe, right? I remember even grappling with that when I first started reading, lots of entrepreneur books, talks about universe. And I remember going, is God jealous when I read this? And having to understand and finally like merge the two and be like, hey, like it's the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, so coming up with this and like we said, deconstructing and talking to people and talking to cool, healthy pastors that are able to think for themselves instead of just what's been passed generation to generation, like the playbook. Um, just so amazing. I actually went with a North Texas pastor down to Houston, and we talked about faith and sexuality to parents and the youth.
Ooh.
And of course, their mind was a little blown. But here's the thing: like my kiddo is 16, and youth, like this next generation, they are not like us,
Oh
right? They've
no.
evolved. They're so free and welcoming and understanding, and they will not let you talk about, their friends that way. Like, not all of them, right? There's some that are very still domesticated, but there's just more than there was, I feel like, all the other generations.
Yeah, I love this new generation. I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old, and there is so much beautiful fluidity that, that just is inherent in them. It's almost like they identify as human, not anything
Yeah.
else. Just, I am a human. And one minute I may feel like a boy, one minute I may feel like a girl, minute I might feel like neither. One minute I might, and that it's fluid and it's not like fickleness, like I think like maybe my generation would be like, well, just decide, or like my parents'
Uh-huh.
generation, but they're just very much in their body, in their feelings. And I love it. I did a whole episode on fluidity because I really think that it's something that's going to elevate us as a culture. Um,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. My kiddo identifies as pansexual, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's beautiful, right? And I think originally she was like bisexual, and then she was like, I'm pansexual, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
that's awesome. And if it changes, it doesn't matter. You just
Abs-
figure you out. You just be you, and it's wonderful.
right, because we are always evolving. I talk about that all the time, where we are always I want to be always evolving throughout my entire life. And,
Yes.
learning who I am now at 52 than who I was at 28, it was like it's just an entirely different person. And I'm I'm proud of that because it shows I'm growing, I'm questioning myself, I'm learning new things. Um, One of the things I want to ask you is because, we talk about relationship diversity here and specifically, there are other structures other than monogamy, even though we mainly learn and are shown monogamous structures. And I almost feel like it's kind of the new coming out, right? That there was a time when,
Oh, yeah, I can see that. How it's, yeah,
yeah,
like now coming out is like, yeah, do it. We love you. And now
right.
it's like, what's the new bad thing?
Totally. I'm like, I'm poly. So it's like, whoa, and but I find that it seems like a similar coming out process. There's a lot of fear involved. What will people think? Am I
Yeah.
bad? Just like the what will people think? What will my family think? What will my
And
friends think? So
yeah,
I
and the
guess
education piece, the
yeah, it's like
ignorance, like it's just, it's not necessarily bad or scary. It's just people don't know. And they're going to default to whatever church said when they're a kid.
exactly. Or whatever they were shown. Like I was only ever shown monogamy growing up. I didn't even know that there was another option.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I guess I want to ask you because I think like coming out, regardless of how you're coming out, and there's probably many other ways that one can come out from a, socio-normative whatever to something that's different. What are some tips that you would, through your own experience and because you're a coming out coach, um, that you could give to people who are facing this moment where they're saying, like, I feel different than everything that I've seen, everything that I've been shown. I'm really scared
Mhm.
and I don't know what to do or how to even begin the process. Like, how would you coach someone or to do that?
Yeah, great question.
Mhm,
So identifying, on one hand, the self-talk that's going on,
mhm,
right? Because even like I said, I was like, oh my gosh, this side, you're going to have both. And it's just, our reticular activating system, right? What we
mhm,
feed it and give it, right? It's used to knowing and thinking that monogamy is the only way because that's all we've fed into it.
mhm,
So, mm, surrounding yourself with community,
mm,
right? People that understand and can talk about it in an intelligent, non-judgmental way and
mhm,
be able to normalize those feelings instead of sometimes we pull people. I know for me, I came out to people that I knew would be supportive right off the
mhm,
bat and then
mhm,
stalled out some of the others. Um, so like selectively sharing in the beginning until you build up that confidence.
mhm,
Um, there was this one pastor that I interviewed on my podcast, and he wrote a piece for I think HuffPost, I think it was, and it was like why I gave up the Bible debates. Right? Sometimes we feel like, oh, this is my new thing. I have to argue about it and defend it to anyone I talk to, right? Or even the idea of I have to come out and tell everyone, otherwise maybe I'm deceptive or
mhm,
lying. And instead it's getting to create. So online, I tell my clients to like create your own space, right? Be very intentional with who you fill it with. Just because someone was in your elementary school class or you work with them for a little bit, or even a family member, it doesn't mean they get to be a part of your everyday life and all of your shares.
mhm,
Like social media can be very selective. So
mhm,
follow people that are uplifting and let go of all the stuff that is just draining or fearful. Um, Not that we don't want to challenge ourselves, but if it's going to negatively impact your mental, emotional health, that's a pass. So surrounding yourself with community, checking in with your self-talk, right? And, you know, listening to this podcast, of course,
yes,
is
of
the
course.
ultimate first step. Um, right? If you can afford a coach, then do that. But there's so many free podcasts or
Mhm,
libraries full of books. the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, there's always going to be someone where you can just expose yourself and start surrounding yourself with the good stuff. Also, being aware that there's always going to be someone out there saying the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
and not to go look for it because you can always find it, right? Even my pastor was like, you can use the Bible to back up anything you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's this or the opposite. You can be like, look here. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing, right, you don't want to search out the people that are actively not wanting to educate themselves, right? They're not asking questions and up for a conversation. They're just wanting to condemn
Mm-hmm.
and shut off their own ears to even entertain the idea. So I think that that's important, just being very intentional, especially in the very beginning, right? In the beginning, I was, when I was fresh out of the closet, it was more like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And now it's I don't care. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no more chains tying me down. I can say anything. I can share anything. Um, when I put that book out this week, normally that would have given me some vulnerability hangover. And I would have been like, my mom's going to read that. And now I'm like, I don't care if she does, but knowing her, she won't want to read it. So she will not even fathom finding it. But it's so freeing to get to that place. But it does take some work. It takes a lot of inner work and surrounding yourself with great people that have that kind of mindset and can let go of old labels and old upbringing and just be curious and being okay with, I'm Annie. I don't have to fit in any of those boxes. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to climb out of this box and straight into the next box, right? Because sometimes we do that. We're like, oh, I want to make it nice and neat and fit, and
Yeah,
that's not.
yeah. And we want to force it. So I love absolutely everything you say. That was my exact experience. And, breathing into the patience of allowing it to unfold in a way that was like the most comfortable way to go in an incredibly uncomfortable and terrifying, scenarios. Like, how
Yes.
can I do this in the most easeful and graceful way within myself? And, it took like 2.5 years to work through it. And it was like every time I would make a little step forward, I almost had to recalibrate and process and breathe and um come to some kind of equilibrium before I could go to the next level. And so
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. And so I would add like having ultimate compassion for yourself in the
Mhm.
process was imperative. And finding community is really important. Um, and you have an incredible community on TikTok.
Thank you. Yeah, thank
You were
you.
my TikTok pusher. You were like, get on TikTok. I'm going to walk you through it. So I did. But I love your community. It's so inviting and open. And I want to really encourage anyone who's coming out in any way because it will apply in all ways to go find Annie on her website, which is AnnieMHenderson.com. And you can get to her TikTok community through that, and her Facebook groups and
Yep,
everything.
and it's the same. Annie M. Henderson on TikTok as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mention this to you, but I started doing a Monday through Friday, just a daily 3 p.m. Central live.
Oh,
So if you have questions or you just want to come in, and I originally, was a little nervous about lives. But I have like these and I don't have a huge people that tons of them that come on, but it's such a lovely, safe place to
mm,
where some people are like, this is the best part of my afternoon, or like this is such a
mm.
safe, loving place. So it's in terms of just being able to talk and share and it doesn't matter if you're going to do coaching with me or not. It's just a nice, protected, lovely bubble of
Yeah.
support and asking whatever questions come up.
Yeah. And, I've known you for several years and I do feel your heart. Like I feel your
Oh,
heart and your acceptance. And I think that when anyone is venturing into an area that is different, to find someone who will accept them and care for them really will make all the difference. Really will make all the difference.
it really can. It really can help and right, especially, coming out and all of what we've talked about today, whether you're coming out as lesbian or any of the letters or poly, um, to have that support because it's not the common theme
Mhm.
initially, right? It's not the everyone's going to accept this right off the bat. So
Mm.
being able to find a safe, loving place like that is a great sort of a great soft spot to begin your journey in.
Yeah, and I think, like, finding that spot will help me build the confidence to say, "It's different than everything that's around me, but it's not there are other people doing this," and finding
Yes.
real fulfillment in venturing out in a different way than maybe everything that's around you. I think that's the beautiful thing about the internet and about social media is that it can have a connective quality to it where you
Mhm.
can find people who are like you across the universe, across the, oceans. That
Sure.
you can feel like, oh, this person gets me. And maybe they're not exactly going through what I'm going through, but they will accept me and support me. Um, and that's the beautiful thing about, finding Annie Henderson on TikTok.
You're so sweet. Yes, I think finding similar stories, like you said, that is
Mhm,
that is massive. One of the reasons the I wrote about later in life lesbians is because I know when I came out, I was desperate for any kind of information or
mhm,
someone going through what I went through. So
mhm,
like even now when I went on there to look for lots of stories or information, there wasn't a lot. So I was like, I'm gonna share my story because it
mhm,
does. I'm on year 11 with my
mm.
partner Sam, and it's ease and flow. And I know I journaled that for years, those words with the business and with my relationship, but ease and flow, like similar to my husband, we don't fight, but
Mhm,
it's different. This one was we don't fight lack of communication, and this one is we communicate so well. We have boundaries, we
mm,
support one another, we laugh every single day, and it's
mm,
just easy and fun and just always hilarious. And so many people fear with coming out or doing new things is that they will hurt their children,
mhm,
right? Like, oh, my kid. But instead, right, my kid's 16. When I met Sam, she was 4,
mhm,
and she's just thriving,
mm,
right? There's no, like, with self care, I know how to take care of myself. So she gets to see this role model of a healthy relationship,
mhm.
right? How to communicate, how to talk about things, how to talk about dreams and struggles and fears and just, so I do want to put that out there because sometimes when we get to live our lives and be authentic and take off the mask, then our kids get to witness what a happy mom or parent actually looks like. And it's life changing.
I could not agree more because kids are really wise and they can
Hmm.
tell if their mom and dad, although on the outside it's like, oh, mom and dad are together, but they're miserable and they
Hmm.
argue. And, you know, I specifically about like my career, I've changed careers so many times and we took over, this vineyard and winery in North Carolina. And I remember thinking like with that decision that that's terrifying for my kids, but I don't want them to see me staying in a job in anything because of fear. I'd rather them know that like I faced the fear and I worked through it and I talked to them about it and they understood that journey because they're seeing like me being my authentic self. And same thing with our relationship as well. And I think that I see them communicate more clearly and openly and communicate their truth to me as they see me, my husband, model that to them as well. So I 100%, I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for,
Yay.
for bringing that up, because I think that's
I know that's a
important.
fear.
So many fears, so many fears. You just got to say hello to the fear and bust through it and have the support too. Well, Annie, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to tell us about? You just published a book and it's available on Amazon, right?
On Amazon, Annie M. Henderson, of course, as well on there. But yeah, Later in Life Lesbians, and then there's a subtitle. But I'll put a link. You can either just search it on Amazon, or I'll put a link to it on my website as well. Thank you for
and that's
asking.
amazing. And that's your story, your own personal story.
It is. Oh, it is. And whether you're a later in life lesbian or not, I think there's enough little tidbits and takeaways that could be helpful and inspiring, even if it's just, this person had all that. Sorry to start us going again. The phrase sunk cost fallacy, the one about, I've already committed this much time in this relationship or this job, so I'm going to stay. Seeing someone go from, I'm stuck and not happy, to life is so good. And just seeing that that's a potential and available to anyone who's ready to do that. You just got to work through those fears, because why stay in your fears? That's not the place to stay.
No,
that's where we just seem to congregate. You got to get out of there.
Yes. Well, Annie, you're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And everyone, go check her out and go check her TikToks out, because they're awesome.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, carriejaroslow.com, Instagram, or TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Are you feeling stuck or unfulfilled in your intimate relationship? Do all your relationships end in the same way? Do you feel like you've lost the spark in your current relationship? Can you never even find one person who you want to explore a relationship with? If you answered yes to any of those questions, are sick and tired of feeling like a failure in your relationships, and desperately desire a different experience, then my 8-week deep reprogramming intensive may be the answer for you. In this program, I work individually with you for 8 transformative weeks. We'll identify the subconscious programming that's keeping you stuck and shift it to a new affirming belief systems. We go deep, we get real, we get results. This is healing unlike anything you've ever experienced before. Here's what people are saying. Jordan from North Carolina said, more has shifted in 8 weeks of working with Carrie than 10 years of psychotherapy. Jane from Sanford, North Carolina said, it's honestly changed my life. And Cassie from Santa Barbara, California said, Carrie's laser precision in helping me diagnose where the stuck energy was helped me make positive movement in our first session alone. Absolutely transformational. I love being a guide and witness to these courageous people who claim that they were done with their past experiences and ready for something different. I'm opening a limited number of spots for 2023 and would love to help you permanently transform your relationship experience. To set up a free 30-minute clarity call where I'll help you uncover your number one block to fulfilling relationships, connect with me through the link in the show notes. You are worthy of experiencing deep fulfillment and love in your relationships. This intensive work will help you get there.